The first round of the 2024 NFL Draft is officially over. It's behind us. And you know what that means. It's time to grade each and every all 32 first-round picks from this year's 2024 NFL Draft. If that sounds good, don't forget to spike the like button. Subscribe for more NFL post-draft content, including my day 2 grades for all picks in the second and the third rounds, and then also my winners and losers of the 2024 NFL Draft. That will be coming soon. Comment below your opinion on my grades, which I must tell you how they work. I don't just give you a letter grade and don't explain it. My letter grades come from the basis of, did the team pick a player that fits a need? Do I like that player? In terms of, did I think there was value in that pick? How does he stack up on my board? Because I make my own player rankings. But I don't put more into that than I do into, does that player fit their scheme? Can I see their vision for that player? Does it actually make sense? Is it logical? There are other things that go above and beyond my personal opinion on a player, but that certainly gets in there just a little bit. So I wanted to explain my grades before I actually give my report card, okay? Spike the like button. Let's go. With the first overall pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears selected Caleb Williams. For many people, the top quarterback in this class, and the, bar none, no doubt about it, first overall pick. But the best part about this selection was the fact that they didn't pick Bryce Young last year, and they got Caleb Williams out of that trade. Remember, this was supposed to be the Carolina Panthers. Don't forget it. People might have forgot. But this was supposed to be the Carolina Panthers. That is the best part about this move, about this pick, about this Caleb Williams selection. The fact that they didn't pick Bryce Young, the fact that they avoided that whole potential bust, and they got Caleb Williams. That is the best part. It goes above and beyond his talent or skill on the field, his bravado, his charisma off the field. His ability to throw from a multitude of arm angles off different platforms, his ability to be creative, his ability to throw with power, with touch, his ability to be a magician in and out of the pocket, his ability to be the closest comparison to Patrick Mahomes that we've seen coming out of the draft. All that is great. But the best part about it is that it wasn't Bryce Young. That's why it's an A. Even though it was obvious, it was an easy pick to make, right? This is an A+++. Because it was an actual easy pick to make. It's an A. Even if it fails, I honestly think his floor is higher than Bryce's floor. So at the end of the day, it's a W. Pick number 2. The Washington Commanders selected Jayden Daniels, who is my third quarterback in this class, which has something to do with my C+ letter grade. I am not the biggest Jayden Daniels guy. I certainly can see where he fails at the NFL level. I kind of believe at the end of the day, when the dust is settled, he will be at best the third best quarterback from this draft class. And I see his game not translating to the degree that people may think. I like his mechanics. I like his accuracy. I love his speed. But there are other aspects that scare me. His size. His inability to be creative outside the pocket, extending plays as a passer. Not a runner, but a passer. Okay? He runs into too many big hits. He's going to get himself hurt. I don't like that he was an older prospect and only broke out in that final season, despite starting a lot of games. He played on a phenomenal team with phenomenal talent at wide receiver. Red flags there. Now, I do think that his speed and athleticism and his mechanics make him startable from day one and give him a solid floor as a player. And I could certainly see him being a starter and a pretty solid one for a number of years. But I do not see him at the level of Caleb Williams. I do not see him at the level of Drake Maye, which is going to transfer to my third pick and my third grade in this video, which is, of course, Drake Maye, which I give maybe my first ever A++. And yes, there's going to be a slight bias in this because Drake Maye was my top quarterback in this draft. Drake Maye went to my favorite team. So maybe that's where the extra plus comes from. But I had him and Caleb toe-to-toe, right? Very close. And personally, where I have Drake over Caleb is long-term. I think Caleb will be better right away for maybe the first 2 to 3 years. And I think beyond that, Drake Maye will become the better player. And I think it's because of character and off-the-field intangibles. There's something about Drake Maye in terms of charisma, the mentality, the attitude, coming from the family he comes from, being the little brother that's had to scrap, claw, and just go for everything in his life, being beat up by his older brothers constantly. That mentality that he has, the competitive nature that I'm not sure, it might be one of the weaknesses of Caleb Williams. I am not 100% sure he possesses that same trait. I think is going to allow Drake Maye to fix some of the flaws in his game. Similarly to a Josh Allen and how he went above and beyond what people expected from him. And Drake Maye has elite physical talent. He has the size. He has the arm strength. He has the best arm in the class, in my opinion. He can make all the throws, inside or outside the pocket, on the move to the left, on the move to the right, in the pocket with people bearing down on him. He has the size, he has the touch, he has the power to make all of those throws. He can be a great athlete by scrambling. He can make a play bootleg outside the pocket and make a big throw down the field. He was the best deep ball thrower from what I saw on tape. He was the statistical best middle of the field passer. So there's a lot to like about Drake Maye. The age, the maturity at that age, the love of football, and then the skill set of the prototypical great quarterback that you see in the NFL, the one that translates the best, the one that looks when you watch him on tape like Justin Herbert or like CJ Stroud with a hint of Josh Allen. He has the Andrew Luck to him. There are things that you really like about Drake Maye, that I really like about Drake Maye, and that I am absolutely ecstatic to have on my football team. So yes, this is an A++. Especially considering you got him third at the quarterback position. And I would have graded this an A+ if he went second to Washington, right? But he goes third behind Jayden Daniels, a player that I think he is above and beyond a much better prospect than. And that's just my personal opinion. But that is why you're here. At pick number 4, the Arizona Cardinals selected a future Pro Bowl All-Pro receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr., which is an A+. I don't even really need to explain this. Anyone that's watched Marvin Harrison Jr. dominate college football the last couple of years with different quarterbacks, this guy is a wicked route runner. He has savviness, extremely high football IQ, incredible hands, amazing body control, and he can run. Right? He's not a burner, but he can run by you. He can set you up with a double move. His release package is so deep. The bag of this receiver coming into the NFL is unlike anyone's bag of receiver tricks I've ever seen. He is just a very, very nuanced player that I think is going to have a great NFL career. At pick number 5, the Los Angeles Chargers selected Joe Alt. I went with the B+ here because, to me, the best tackle on the board was Joe Alt. Absolutely. I like the pick for that fact alone because you're getting an elite blue chip prospect with your top pick. But I did think that there was a possibility that they could have gone with a receiver. Now, I personally mocked them a tackle. I actually thought JC Latham was going to be the pick, only because of the connection to Harbaugh and because of some of the smoke surrounding that over the past couple of days. But Joe Alt, I think, was the right pick in terms of building the foundation of an offensive line. But then you consider, well, Slater plays left tackle, Alt played left tackle at Notre Dame, so how's that going to work? That's a slight little downgrade in the grade as opposed to a Latham who you could really see playing right tackle and Rashawn playing left tackle. It's a very small nuance, but I think it matters in my grading. And then on top of that, you might have liked to have seen them pick Malik Nabers for Justin Herbert. I know the fan base might have liked to seen that because their offensive line really isn't as bad as people think. But you really can't get that mad at picking a tackle that has the upside of Joe Alt, that could be as good right away as Joe Alt. And having Rashawn Slater and Alt on the same offensive line is ludicrous. So you have to like that. I think overall it's a very good pick. It's just like there's small things about it that don't make it an A for me. At pick number 6, Malik Nabers gets an A for me for the Giants. I just think he's an explosive dimension that the Giants desperately need at receiver. And I understand that some Giants fans wanted a quarterback here. They tried desperately to get up for Drake Maye, which is another reason that the Patriots had to hang up the phone on the Giants and the Minnesota Vikings trying to give them a huge offer. Why that's an A++. Just shouting that out here. But Malik Nabers is an A because he is, from day one, I think going to be an explosive, electric, game-changing receiver who can flip a field, who in one play can take a slant 40 yards, 50 yards for a touchdown. He reminds me of Odell Beckham Jr. that the Giants previously had in terms of skill set. He reminds me of hints of Jamar Chase. He reminds me of DJ Moore. He is this type of guy that you can align in the slot. You can align outside. He can win at all 3 levels. He's a great after-catch receiver, the most effective in this class. And I think he is going to bring an explosive dimension to the Giants that they have not had since OBJ. So that's why it's an A for me. He is a top 10 talent, if not top 5 talent in this class. He is an A for the Giants. At pick 7, JC Latham, the second tackle off the board. I give the Titans a B here. I would have maybe considered trading back if I were the Tennessee Titans, if they could have traded back. That definitely kind of lowers my grade or thought on this pick. I do believe that they could have maybe gotten more picks in this spot. I don't know that for a fact, so that's just speculation, okay? But I am saying that maybe a trade back was possible. On top of that, he's good, but I didn't really see a huge difference between the other top tackles in this class, between Latham and the other ones. He's also more of a right tackle, although I feel like he could play either side, and I really felt like they needed a left more than a right, but either way, they need offensive line, so I'm not really going to get mad. So overall, the need was there. It just, maybe part of it is it wasn't Joe Alt, and I thought it was going to be Joe Alt for quite some time. So maybe this pick just doesn't feel as tangible, as sexy. It doesn't get me going, my blood boiling quite as much. So it's just kind of a vanilla pick. It just feels kind of, it's a B. It's okay. I like it. It makes sense. It's a good need pick. But I'm not blown out of the water. Maybe it's also the Alabama tackle thing. I don't know. There's things about it that I'm just like, it's good, but I don't know. Is it great? I don't know. But I like their strategy overall from the offseason to get L'Jarius Sneed, to get Calvin Ridley, and now to get a tackle in the draft. Makes perfect sense. Next up. At number 8, Michael Penix Jr. This is the worst draft grade I have ever given in the history of the Bottom Line View. I'm almost positive of it. I don't remember or recall all of my grades, but this has to be the worst. Like, this is the worst draft pick I have ever seen in the history of the NFL draft, this high in the NFL draft. This is, without a doubt, the biggest jabroni pick I have ever seen watching the NFL draft. I could not believe it. I almost thought it was a Comedy Central skit. I thought that I was watching SNL. I could not believe this pick. And then you see the reaction of the owner and the GM talking that out and having to wonder. You have Kirk Cousins on 2 years, guaranteed $40 million, right? Huge contract. You just paid Kirk Cousins a massive contract, and you pick a 24-year-old quarterback who isn't even a first-round talent in my book. So let's imagine that Michael Penix, I thought he was really good, right? I would still give this a C or a C+. Then you add on to the fact that I don't even think Michael Penix is like a long-term NFL starting quarterback. It's an F-. Like, I do not see the fluidity in his arm or game to make a multitude of throws off multiple platforms that I think you need to have to be a very good quarterback. I think a little bit less accuracy than people give him credit for because his receivers were so good at making jump ball catches, especially Rome, that they made up for some of his bad throws. You see a prospect that targets the outside of the numbers frequently and avoids the middle of the field. Red flag. A quarterback that ran a fast 40 that doesn't really run. Red flag. A quarterback with a bunch of knee injuries. Red flag. I love the perseverance off the field. I love the football character. I love his arm strength. But man, this is an F-. You're the Atlanta Falcons who just signed Kirk Cousins. You haven't had a quarterback since Matt Ryan retired. You need to give him help in order to make this successful. And you draft a quarterback? I could get the second round, the third round, or the fourth round. I wouldn't even hate it if it was the second round. But the first round? That is absolutely catastrophic. Horrible. With the 9th pick in the 2024 NFL Draft, the Chicago Bears bounced back in a positive direction for this NFL Draft and picked a good football player, Rome Odunze out of Washington, his teammate, who made Michael Penix look a lot better than I think he actually is. I'm just going to say that. I'm giving you my honest take. I do not care, okay? I'm not going to sugarcoat like a lot of these other places. I'm not going to do that. This is the bottom line view. I give you the bottom line, okay? Rome Odunze is a really good receiver. I think that he is going to be a great contested catch artist. I had him in his own tier by himself as the 3rd best receiver in this class. I think he can align all over a formation from the X receiver to the slot. I think he's going to be a savvy and effective route runner in the middle of the field. I think he can just body people, has great body control, amazing hands, and his contested catch ability is going to be like a cheat code for Caleb Williams, who can definitely throw the ball in a pinpoint location for that man to box somebody out and catch the ball for like 12 touchdowns as a rookie. So I think Rome's going to be a very good player. He has very good and very high football character, and I'm sure he's going to be great for the culture of the Chicago Bears. I'm not sold that he's going to be an absolute alpha Larry Fitzgerald, Keenan Allen type stud like some other people are billing him to be, but I do think he's going to be very good. So at number 9, Rome Odunze, I just feel like I put A- instead of A or A+ because I felt like defense was more important for them to grab. They already did just trade for Keenan Allen. They do have DJ Moore. They have Cole Kmet. Like, they have enough weapons for Caleb to work with early on. Let's get some defense, right? Let's get a defensive line going. Byron Murphy was on there. Latu's there. Any defensive prospect is there to be had. Maybe Rome had that much greater of a grade. Not for me personally. I would have went with Byron Murphy probably. So that's just my personal preference. But Rome is a really good player and could definitely be a better player than the defensive player they could have grabbed here. But the thing is, I just felt like they could have gotten a defensive prospect in the top 10 and then maybe addressed receiver again next year after Keenan Allen time kind of runs out in Chicago. But that's just my opinion. That's why it's A- instead of A+. At number 10, Fashanu out of Penn State. Olu, our boy. B+ for the Jets. This one's tough. I could see grades all over the place for this one. It was semi-predictable that they were going to pick a tackle. Here's my problem with this specific tackle. Although I feel like he was the next one in line, like he was arguably the 3rd best tackle in this class for many people, and that's cool. And I think for pass protecting purposes, definitely fantastic. I think as a guy that can come off the bench in year 1, and if Tyron Smith is out, can fill in definitely, and maybe even play right side, right tackle for Morgan Moses if he goes down or he's just missing in action, although I think Morgan Moses had been fairly healthy over the course of his career, so it's more Tyron Smith. But that being said, my thing is like, he's not really going to be able to contribute right away, and the Jets are in a win-now window, and Brock Bowers was still on the board. So, like, I kind of felt like they were going to go with somebody that, like a Fuaga, or like potentially a Latham, who I could have seen playing guard, but then transferring to tackle later on in their career. That would have maybe boosted this to an A, right? But Fashanu, I don't really see that. So I see him as an exclusive bench player in year 1, which is a little rough. So that's why I gave it a B plus instead of an A, but a very good player. Next up, at number 11, JJ McCarthy. I give a B plus for the Vikings. They didn't have to trade up, to make this happen. JJ McCarthy, they had the 11th pick. They traded up to number 10. And I actually have these Jets and Vikings backwards, so I apologize for that. But JJ McCarthy, they barely had to do anything to swap with the Jets. And they still got their guy. So that is like a large part of this. But secondly, I think JJ is an interesting prospect. I think that he obviously has the off-the-field character. Like, hard worker, seems like a smart and diligent kid. He's going to put in the time to improve. I think he fits the system well. I think in terms of play action pass, in terms of ripping the ball over the middle of the field, in terms of athleticism and good feet to maneuver and get outside the pocket and roll out, I think all those things are sound. He kind of reminds me of a semi-Brock Purdy type. I think he has a stronger arm. I'm not sure, though, he has that high football IQ. I'm not sure that he can play under pressure at that level in the NFL. I'm a little bit concerned about his play against pressure, especially with middle pressure, interior pressure. There are things that scare me because he played on such a great team at Michigan and he wasn't really relied upon to do a lot. And I like him, I just don't love him. So it's kind of a tough grade to give out because they got him at 10. They barely had to do anything to trade up. And they made it happen for the guy that they wanted, even if they might have wanted Drake Maye more. So the question is really like, did they want Drake Maye and then they kind of settled for JJ? That might be a little concerning. Or did they like both of these guys? That's maybe a question to ask. But I think B plus is fair because I think this is a good prospect, not a great prospect. It's not a home run. It definitely could be a bust. But still, like, even if he's a bust, they didn't have to trade up much. It's a rookie contract quarterback. Who really cares at the end of the day? So that's where I get the B plus from. At pick number 12, Bo Nix gets a C minus for the Denver Broncos. I think they could have traded back and still gotten Bo Nix. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I'm on drugs. But man, if anyone was on drugs, it was the Atlanta Falcons and then Sean Payton. Like, bro, I know that you have, and I like Sean Payton. I've always been a Sean Payton guy. I know you have a massive ego when it comes to making quarterbacks work in the NFL. But Bo Nix, Bo Nix to me is like a system managing quarterback with like a decent arm, decent athleticism. He doesn't really have any trait to his game where I'm like physically speaking or even mentally speaking where I'm like, I'm blown away. His decision-making is good. But the offense he was in, I mean, it's pretty easy to make good decisions when a lot of your passes are at the line of scrimmage, a lot of bubble screens. I do think he has better arm strength than given credit for, but he's an older prospect. Like, he went from Auburn to Oregon. He finally succeeded at Oregon. It's not like it's really hard to succeed at Oregon, given the competition he's playing with the great offensive line he has, with, the receiver and the talent and the offense. And, I don't know, man. I just don't see it with him. And that's the thing. This is my personal take. This is my personal opinion. Some people may value Bo Nix as the third best quarterback in this class. I thought he was the 6th. And you're taking him 12th overall? That's insane to me. That's insane. And really, when I think about it, the Broncos are going to be picking first overall in the 2025 NFL draft and going to be picking a quarterback. So is this even a C minus? I'm being kind. At least they didn't have to trade up. At least they didn't pick Michael Penix at 8 when they already had Kirk Cousins. They did just trade for Zach Wilson, which makes this a little bit more confusing, but I did say in that video that it didn't really persuade them to not pick a quarterback. I just think that they could have gotten this guy in the second round. I really do. Or the late first. They could have picked up a bunch of picks. And they didn't do that. So that's confusing. That is mind-numbing. I don't know, man. I just don't think Bo Nix is going to be special. I just don't think he's going to be a great player. So that's why I think it's a C minus, because they're going to be picking a quarterback at number 1 next year. Mark my words. Next, at number 13, Brock Bowers is a stud. The Raiders got a football player. This is an A. I do not care that the Raiders have Michael Mayer. I do not care that the Raiders have Devontae Adams, Jacoby Myers, and a bunch of receiving weapons already. I do not care that they needed a corner. I do not care that they needed a quarterback because none of them were left anyways. They just got a top 5 player in the draft at number 13. He's an absolute stud. He's one of the best tight ends you've ever seen come out of college. He's a great athlete. He's great after the catch. He can block a little bit. He can play in line. He can play in the slot. You can line him up out wide. He's the next Travis Kelce, in my opinion. He is that good. So that's an A, right? Like borderline A+. The only reason I don't give it the plus is because they didn't need a tight end. That's the only reason. But Brock Bowers is more than a tight end. He's a playmaker. At pick number 14, Fuaga to the Saints. I like Fuaga a lot. That's why it's an A, borderline A-. I thought that he was the second best tackle in the class. I would have taken him ahead of JC Latham. Here's the thing with him, though. There are subtle concerns that are not there with JC Latham in terms of arm length, size, prototypical things that you look for in a tackle. Some people thought Fuaga was a guard, which is where I give it an A- instead of an A+ or an A. Just because there's a possibility that the floor for him at tackle, because they wanted a tackle 100%. Not a guard, they wanted a tackle, right? But I think his floor is so high because of his technique. I think because he can play left guard. I think he can play right guard. I think he can play left tackle. I think he can play right tackle. I think this guy could play literally any position, basically on the offensive line. Well, that's why his floor is really high. He is a nasty run blocker. To me, the best run blocker in the class. And I think he had great technique in pass pro. So I like Fuaga a lot. I see a really high ceiling for him at guard. I see him being a good tackle. But that's kind of my minus part, is the fact that I think he's a better guard than tackle at the NFL level. At number 15, Laiatu Latu goes to the Colts. I give this a B+, mostly because they didn't really need an edge player, but he was the best edge player in the class. And so the Colts just took a player that was high on their board. And I actually think this makes a strength stronger, which I'm always a fan of, right? They have Grover Stewart and DeForest Buckner in the interior. They've got Kwity Paye, and they've got Ebukam on the edge, right? So you add Latu there. I think Latu is better than Kwity Paye will ever be in terms of like their ceiling. And Kwity Paye is a pretty good player. Not great, pretty good, right? Ebukam's more of like a number 2, number 3 edge rusher in this league. DeForest Buckner's absolute stud still at his later age, but he's getting older. So Latu, I think, has the highest ceiling among everyone except for Buckner here. And they add that to their pass rush to a team that is a Gus Bradley defense, right? And they always value that pass rush. They always value a deep rotation. So I totally understand it. It's just that they needed a playmaker, a receiver potentially. I felt like they needed a corner more than this, right? Like Quinyon Mitchell is still there at this pick. Even Arnold was still there at this pick, although I would have preferred Latu over Arnold personally. We'll get to that. And then also, you know, they could have picked Brian Thomas Jr. for an explosive weapon here as well, although he slipped a little bit further than expected. So there were alternatives. They maybe even could have traded back. But to me, like, Latu is the best edge rusher in this class. I can't get too mad at it. Super great technique, versatile player as an edge. I think he's good against the run, the pass, and he's going to be great on games and blitzes and stunts. Some people think he has some TJ Watt to him, where he's going to be that just amazing playmaker where he can drop back into coverage. He can rush the quarterback with great technique, great speed to power, and just all the different moves. A black belt of playing the edge position out of college is rare to see. So Latu is ready-made for the NFL. At pick number 16, Byron Murphy to the Seahawks is an A. I would have given it an A+. I'm surprised that he made it this far down the board. I think he's the best interior defensive lineman in this class by a wide margin. And I felt like he was a top 3 defensive player in this class, along with Latu and Mitchell. And so the Seahawks land him here. And they definitely needed like another guy in the inside, but I didn't think that was their biggest need. I definitely felt like offensive line was a bigger need. I felt like maybe a safety or corner was a bigger need for them. but I can't really get mad at adding a 3-tech. I can't get mad at adding a guy that's going to rush from the B gap and going to be a monster against the run and going to be really good against the pass and a quick jump off the ball, getting to the quarterback, racking up sacks. This is Justin Madubuike for Mike Macdonald 2.0. That's a great pick, in my opinion. To pair that up with Leonard Williams, to pair that up with Jerron Reed, to pair that up with the pieces they have, Draymond Jones on the inside, that's potentially dangerous. Nwosu on the edge. They've got a really talented pass rush now all of a sudden. Love building from the interior. Love building the defensive line for Mike Macdonald. At pick number 17, Dallas Turner gets a B. They had to trade up from 23 to 17. It wasn't overly expensive to do so, but I'm just not the biggest Dallas Turner guy, which is why I give them a B plus, somewhere around that range. I like the thought, but I also felt like edge rusher is not a huge need for the Vikings. Like, honestly, they just signed Jonathan Greenard and invested in him, and Andrew Van Ginkel is a good player. Like, I didn't think they needed edge that much. I guess they felt differently, or they wanted to have a deep rotation. But to me, like, interior defensive line, bigger need for them. Like, if they would have traded up and landed Byron Murphy, I would have been more excited for that. Corner, Quinyon Mitchell, if they would have traded for him, that would have been, I think, more exciting here. I think that, they need an offensive line more than an edge player. But to me, like, I still like the pick. I just don't love it because I'm kind of in and out on the prospect. I feel like he's got the prototypical length, bend, speed, and burst off the ball that you like. But I also feel like he's very raw in his pass rush package. He hasn't really been taught exactly how to get to the quarterback effectively with a multitude of moves and how to rush with a plan. And not like Latu. So I feel like there was a gap there between the two of them. But has a lot of tools to work with, which you get excited about that. And you pick an edge rusher in the first round, valuable position. I can't get too mad at it. It's just I felt like there were other positions they did need a little bit more. Amarius Mims at pick number 18. It's a pretty basic pick by the Bengals here. Everyone kind of thought they might go with the tackle, but the intriguing part about this is that they didn't pick Brian Thomas Jr. at receiver, which means T. Higgins might be staying. And then they also didn't pick an edge rusher like Jared Verse here. Maybe they would have picked Dallas Turner at this selection, but Trey Hendrickson could also be staying. That was the most enlightening of what this pick was, because I felt like they would have pivoted if they knew something about T. Higgins, especially, or Trey Hendrickson, right? They did draft Myles Murphy last year, which I guess, they might have not picked an edge rusher, but I like this idea of having Amarius Mims, who could play left or right tackle, and having him slot in as a backup for Trent Brown in year one and Orlando Brown in year one, and then eventually replacing Trent Brown in year two. Now, Mims could also, go in for Trent Brown. He's constantly kind of out of shape. It will motivate Trent Brown to play better, in my opinion. And then also Trent Brown gets hurt and misses a few games every year, but his ceiling is really high as a player, Trent Brown. But also having Mims in a tackle group that has huge 6'8", 340-pound tackles, that's going to teach him how to be a really good pro at the next level. So that's going to do him wonders. So I really like this upside with this pick, and he's in a really good situation to succeed here. So makes perfect sense. He's a great fit for their offensive line. At pick number 19, Jared Verse also gets a B. I felt like this was just, it was a little bit, not shocking enough or not kind of ballsy enough for me, for the Rams. Like, Jared Verse fits a need. Edge rush. They needed the edge rusher. Absolutely. But there were better players on the board, in my opinion, with more upside. And that's kind of where I'm a little bit disgruntled when it comes to this Sean McVay selection as his first ever first round pick. I was misled by Peter Schrager and company, who told me that they were going to pick an offensive player. And so I thought they might trade up and get Brock Bowers. I thought they might pick, Brian Thomas here, or a tackle, right? And so I was misled a little bit by the end of the draft process. Ultimately, they get a player that fits their need, but I don't see a huge upside with Jared Verse. He's a power player. He's pretty stiff. I do think he'll be good. I just wonder if he'll be great, And so that's where kind of the B comes in. I kind of see him as, like an 8-sack guy. I don't see him as a dominant edge rusher where he's going 12 sacks a year. And that's kind of where I'm hung up on it, especially when you've got a guy like Brian Thomas who's sitting there, Quinyon Mitchell, who's my top corner sitting there, who could really still help them. So that's kind of where I'm just a little bit like, it's a good pick. It's just not great, At pick number 20, Troy Fautanu out of Washington goes to the Steelers. Like this pick a lot. A- for me. He could play all 5 spots on the offensive line. Steelers fans, after this pick was made, they're like, where is he going to play? Left tackle? Is he going to play center? And they're ultimately not sure. And I think that's what makes this pick really good, because I think he could play both spots. It doesn't really matter. I think he's going to be elite at both spots, but don't be surprised if he plays center. He's got amazing feet and amazing movement skills. They're off the charts. There are highlights of this guy doing spin moves against spin-moving defensive linemen. He's outrageous in terms of his feet, and he has great recovery timing. He's also a really dangerous run blocker because of how quickly he can get into space. He's going to be a great Pittsburgh Steeler. Any spot that they put him, guard, center, tackle, it doesn't really matter. Really good pick. The only thing I'd say is, for the Steelers, it just wasn't a pick where I felt like it's going to raise their ceiling for 2024, which would have been a pick to me of a receiver, would have been a pick to me of maybe a corner, or maybe a potential landing some sort of quarterback in this draft. But obviously they made their moves for Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. If they would have gone out there and landed a big-time receiver, that maybe would have raised their ceiling for 2024. But long-term, this is a really good pick, which is why I landed A-. Just A+ would have been a pick where I'm just like absolutely floored by how did this guy land in this spot, right? At pick number 21, Chop Robinson, I'm going to give a C. Like, Chop Robinson, extremely, extremely raw. And I just felt like 21 was too high for a player of this caliber. Like, yeah, he's got really good physical traits and tools and incredible speed, 4.4 speed for an edge rusher, just like Dallas Turner. He rushes around the corner and the edge well, and he's a good speed rusher, but he doesn't have very much power to his game. He's not very good in the run game. I think he's a designated pass rusher, and so I feel like this is a little bit of a reach. And I also felt like they needed offensive line with really good offensive linemen on the board. I think they needed an interior defensive lineman more than this. I would have been more excited if they would have picked a corner at this spot. But they end up going with a edge rusher where, yeah, they've got some injuries here short term, but ultimately you've signed Chubb, and Jalen Phillips is a stud, and I feel like those two guys are your starters long term. So this just feels like a little bit of a luxury pick at the end of the day. At pick number 22, Quinyon Mitchell, finally, after I've brought him up 7 times already. And I was just shocked he made it this far in the draft. I just don't understand how a cornerback that plays man-to-man coverage on an island, that dominated the Senior Bowl, that runs as fast as he does, I believe it was Ben Solak said, how he runs. He looks like a Build-A-Bear at corner, right? He's got the size, he's got the length, he's got the movement skills, he's got the speed, and I'm just in love with man press corners, and that's what Quinyon Mitchell is. If Vic Fangio wanted to draft you, you're probably pretty darn good at corner, right? Like, we've seen this before, so that's going to give them a weapon on the outside where they can match up him with a number 1 receiver, on the opposing team, and they can allow Darius Slay to be the number 2. They can cut James Bradberry because he's absolute garbage, and they can have a different, look to their defense, add some speed to their secondary, add a dimension of man coverage. So I'm excited here for Quinyon Mitchell to the Eagles. This is a home run pick in my opinion. At pick number 23, Brian Thomas Jr. gets an A for me for the Jags. I brought him up multiple times already in this video. Why did this team not pick him? Why did that team not pick him? Brian Thomas Jr. with Trevor Lawrence, that's great. Trevor Lawrence has a great deep ball. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is an explosive downfield threat that's going to really raise the ceiling for this team. When you thought about Jacksonville previous to this pick, you thought of them as an 8 or 9 win team, 7 win team. They didn't have an outside receiver. They got rid of Calvin Ridley. Well, now you've got a guy that ran maybe the most impressive 40 time among all players at the draft, or at the combine, I should say, in the draft. He has rare stop-start ability and reminds me a little bit of a DK Metcalf. You're going to line him at the X position, and he's going to go to work, and I think he's going to win a lot for Trevor Lawrence. So, and from day one, he's going to have a pretty simple, route tree, but I think it's going to be very effective. At pick number 24, Terrion Arnold gets an A- with all consideration for the Detroit Lions. They had to move up a few spots for a player that was my third favorite corner in the class. So that's where I docked them a little bit, but I'm not going to really dock them a ton for their evaluation of Arnold because I know some had him as their favorite corner in the class, which is where I'm not going to get too upset with that. But my evaluation really lies in, is he going to be the type of perimeter corner that they want? Is he big and physical enough at the line of scrimmage? Is he going to be able to play man coverage on an island well enough, right? Carlton Davis can do those things, but can Arnold do those things? I kind of saw him more as a zone corner, more of an off-the-ball, corner, and then more of a nickel corner. And I wonder how that kind of works out with Brian Branch. Does that move him more to a safety spot? Does Arnold's versatility really allow them to move around Branch, which is also something that I thought was a positive. Like maybe, in some formations, they'll have Arnold as their number 2 corner, Davis as their number 1, and then they'll have Branch at the nickel spot. And then in some formations, they might put Branch at free safety and have Arnold in the nickel spot. So it allows some versatility and creativity to Aaron Glenn's defense. But I also would have rather had Nate Wiggins, personally. I just like that prospect more. I like that style of corner more. But I also understand that others feel differently. So it's kind of a wishy-washy type of evaluation for me. At number 25, Jordan Morgan, I'm going to give a B. I thought that Graham Barton would have been a better pick here, just personally. But who am I to really talk about the Packers picking an offensive lineman? I mean, they're geniuses when it comes to this art. So Jordan Morgan, I liked a lot, though. I will admit that I thought he was underrated. And I think a lot of drafts, like a lot of previous drafts, or a lot of drafts in general, he would have been a top 20 pick in a lot of drafts, just because I think that he has really good movement skills, really good pulling ability at the guard position. I think he's going to excel. I don't think he's a tackle at the NFL level, but his versatility, I think, will allow them to do a lot of different things with their starting 5. And then I think he's going to be great in the running game for them. And then he's a ready-made pass protector at guard because he played tackle for much of his college career, many starts there. So I think he's ready from a technique standpoint to be able to handle NFL pass rushers. So Jordan Morgan, really good player with a high ceiling. Seemed like Nick Saban and Bill Belichick really liked him. So, I think this could be a really good pick for the Packers. I just felt like it wasn't like the most electric pick, which is maybe where I'm getting a little bit lost. But I felt like there was maybe a better lineman on the board for them to select, and possibly different players like, maybe a secondary playmaker would have been more attractive for me personally, but I'm not going to hate on this pick. I mean, Packers picking offensive lineman, he's going to be good. Next up, at number 26, Graham Barton. I give this an A because I felt like he was higher on my board than Jordan Morgan. I like Barton a lot. I think he's a unique athlete. I mean, the guy played lacrosse, then he turned into an offensive lineman. That's probably where he gets his movement skills from, his agility from, his lateral movement from, as a lax player myself. Barton out of Duke is extremely high IQ. I think he's going to be an excellent center for the Bucs. This was definitely a need for the Bucs. They needed a center that could move, that could get their run game going, and they finally got one. I think he's going to be an excellent player. Tristan Wirfs is going to be smiling for sure, and so is Baker Mayfield. At pick number 27, Darius Robinson. I give a B-. I like Darius Robinson as a prospect. I just don't love the fit in my mind with Jonathan Gannon. I just wonder what position he's going to play. Is he going to be a 5-tech or is he an edge player? Because if you're considering him a 5-tech at 6'5", 280 or whatever he is, like, he kind of feels like a Trey Flowers type player for me. Plays with power, plays with good technique on the edge, but he's not explosive. Right? He's a power player, and he's not very fast. So I wonder how Gannon's like Eagle defense, that's what I'm thinking of, how this guy fits into that. Now, maybe he'd fit into more of what the Cardinals are going for in this vibe now, but you just signed a bunch of interior linemen, so is he going to play edge? If so, he seems a little slow and unathletic to play that position. I'm just confused by the fit, which is maybe where I'm getting this wrong. But I do understand the need. Don't get me wrong, and I love the versatility of the player, and I love the character of the player. I'm just a little confused by the fit, which is why I give it a B-. I also don't see a huge ceiling for him. I think he's going to be a good player, but I'm not sure about a great player. At number 28, Xavier Worthy ends up landing in the nightmare scenario to the Kansas City Chiefs. Can't believe it, but Xavier Worthy was one of my favorite players in the draft. Loved him at Texas. He's super explosive. Stop on the dime quickness. Unbelievable speed. Good toughness. I think he's a lot more powerful than people give him credit for. He could be the next Tyreek Hill. He could. He could also be the next John Ross. But I see somewhere in the middle for him. I feel like his size could definitely get him in trouble, at the line of scrimmage. But with Andy Reid putting this guy in bunches and stacks and finding different motions for him, he's going to be a nightmare. They're going to give him handoffs. He's going to return punts. I mean, the guy is going to be a nightmare. And he's going to be running 60-yard post. And Mahomes is going to throw him, I hate how much this pick is so good. I hate it. Next up, at number 29, Tyler Guyton gets a B. This was the most predictable pick of the draft by the Dallas Cowboys. Everyone knew they were going to pick Tyler Guyton, which is maybe part of the I don't love it. But part of it is also just that I feel like Tyler Guyton is pretty raw. I'm not overly, excited about this pick. I do feel like I see the ceiling. I feel like Guyton has really good feet and has the potential to be a really good pass blocker. But he needs a lot of work from a technique standpoint, from a coaching standpoint. So I give it a B. I say, hey, Cowboys, I trust you to make this work. You made it work with Tyler Smith. I like Tyler Smith, though. So it's a little bit of difference for me. I liked Tyler Smith a lot coming out of the draft last year. I didn't really love Tyler Guyton as much. So there's definitely starts under his belt. He could be really good, but he's pretty raw. So we'll see with this one. Definitely a position of need. I'm just not sold on the prospect. At pick number 30, Nate Wiggins, A-. I think the Ravens could have used an offensive lineman or a receiver or even, an edge rusher more than a corner. But Nate Wiggins is a dog. I love Nate Wiggins. I love the way he plays. He plays with physicality. For his frame is impressive. Love his movement skills. He plays very fluid, very relaxed, very just fast. He is a 4.28 40 guy. I think he'll run a 4.3 once he gets a little bit more weight on him. He's tall. He does have a lack of length, but man, if you were going against the Chiefs in the AFC Championship, you could easily put Nate Wiggins on Xavier Worthy and not be worried about it because this guy runs almost as fast as him and he can mirror and match a lot of different receivers in the NFL with his fluidity of movement. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Christian Gonzalez, maybe a lesser version, less length, less size, but man, he is good. I like him a lot. At number 31, Ricky Pearsall out of Florida goes to the 49ers, which is constantly causing the questions and instantly causing the questions of will Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk be traded? We'll see, guys. But Ricky Pearsall, I think, is a lot better than people are going to give him credit for. First of all, he's an absolute freak athlete. I had him as my number 8 receiver, but I almost put him as my number 5 or 6. Like, it was really, really close. And the thing about Pearsall is he's a sick athlete. His vert, he jumps out the gym. Right? I've heard that he can dunk the basketball in any which way you want. His 3-cone is Julian Edelman-like historic levels. His 40 was a 4.4, right? He can run vertical, especially from the slot. He's dangerous. His hands are unbelievable. There's one catch, he palms the ball like this, right? He is a really wicked route runner. He can run routes at all 3 levels. He's pretty good after the catch. He's got good body control and good contact balance. He is a little bit older of a prospect, but he's tough as nails, man. He takes huge hits on tape. He played with terrible quarterbacks in college, still was successful, transferred from ASU to Florida. I think he could be a home run pick for the Niners. I think he could replace Deebo, replace Ayuk in a year or two, or maybe even be like their number 3 this year, and then be their number 2 in a year's time. But he's going to be a good player for Kyle Shanahan, I think. He's got all the makings of being really good. The final pick. Oh, and the reason I gave it only a B is I'm just confused, right? Like, is Deebo getting traded? Is Ayuk getting traded? They didn't really need a receiver right now. They could have used an offensive lineman more. They could have used a corner more. So, like, I'm a little bit confused by it, but I just want to see what their plan is. At number 32, Xavier Legette, who I mentioned by accident in this video already. I give it a B because I understand the pick. They needed a big outside target that can run vertical and can catch contested passes. Totally get it. He complements Deontay Johnson pretty well and complements Adam Thielen and will give Bryce Young another option to throw the ball to. Totally get it. South Carolina kid. Carolina loves their Carolina kids. I understand it. I don't love the player. I feel like he's got an upside to him with his size and his frame. He's got that A.J. Brown look, right? He's really good after the catch. He's thick. He's fast. But he does not have a lot of agility. He does not run sideline to sideline like laterally very well. And that is where he kind of is not very good as a route runner. He doesn't separate extremely well on routes that he doesn't win at the line of scrimmage. So I'm a little bit worried about his nuance and his route running compared to a Ladd McConkey or a Ricky Pearsall, who we just discussed. He's more of a pure athlete playing receiver, which always scares me a little. But if they think that if they get the next A.J. Brown, which it could be the ceiling here, it's going to be a great pick. So like that's where I'm like kind of in the middle with this one. So Xavier Legette at number 32 is a B. Those are my first round draft grades. Let me know where you agree. Let me know where you disagree. It's been a long day for me, a long night. I can't wait for round 2 and round 3. I'm going to sit back, relax, and watch the draft. And then I'm going to grade everything and get back to you guys at the end of round 2 and 3 and let you know what I thought of those picks. Thank you so much for watching. It's Mitch. Peace, guys.